aquarianradio.com.
Aloha and welcome to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. And I am your host, Janet Kier Lesson, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lesson. And today is an episode of Planetary Solutions. We just came upon an article, a very interesting article. Scientists proves DNA can be reprogrammed by words and frequencies, published by Get Holistic Health. And the authors are Grazia Fosser and Franz Bludolf.
The human DNA is a biological internet, and it's better in many ways than the artificial internet. Russian scientific research explains phenomena such as clairvoyance, intuition, remote healing, self-healing, affirmation techniques, and unusual auras around spiritual masters, as well as the mind's influence on weather patterns. There's a lot of evidence for a new type of medicine in which DNA can be reprogrammed by words and frequencies without cutting and without replacing specific genes.
Only 10% of our DNA is being used for building proteins. It is this subset of DNA that is of interest to Western researchers and is being examined and categorized. The other 90% are considered junk DNA. The Russian researchers, however, convinced that nature was not dumb, joined linguists and geneticists in a venture to explore those 90% of junk DNA. Their results, findings, and conclusions are simply revolutionary. According to them, our DNA is not only responsible for the construction of our body, but also serves as data storage and in communication. The Russian linguists found that the genetic code, especially in the apparently useless 90%, follows the same rules as our human languages. To this end, they compared the rules of syntax, the way in which words are put together to form phrases and sentences, semantics, the study of meaning in language forms, and the basic rules of grammar. They found that alkalines of our DNA follow a regular grammar and do have set rules just like our languages. So human languages did not appear coincidentally, but are a reflection of our inherent DNA.
The Russian biologist Garjejev explored also the vibratory behavior of the DNA. What he found was that living chromosomes function just like holographic computers using the DNA laser radiation. This means they managed to modulate certain frequency patterns into a laser ray, and with this laser ray, the Russians influenced the DNA frequency and the genetic information. Since the basic structure of DNA alkaline pairs and language are the same structure, you don't need to decode DNA.
One can simply use words and sentences of the human language. This too was experimentally proven. Living DNA substance in living tissue, not in vitro, will always react to language-modulated laser rays and even to radio waves if the proper frequencies are being used. This finally and scientifically explains why affirmations, autogenous training, hypnosis, and the like can have such strong effects on humans and their bodies. It is entirely normal and natural for our DNA to react to language. While Western researchers cut single genes from the DNA strands and insert them elsewhere, the Russians enthusiastically worked on devices that can influence the cellular metabolism through suitable modulated radio and light frequencies and thus repair genetic defects.
Garjejev showed that chromosomes damaged by X-rays could be repaired. They even captured information patterns of a particular DNA and transmitted it to another. That way, they reprogrammed cells to another genome. They transformed frog embryos to salamander embryos just by transmitting the DNA patterns. This way, the entire information was transmitted without any of the side effects or disharmonies that you get when you're cutting out and reintroducing single genes from DNA. Now, this represents a big revolution. By simply applying vibration and language instead of archaic cutting out, you get the same result. There's immense power then in wave genetics, and it has great influence on the formation of organisms.
Esoteric and spiritual teachers have known for ages that our body is programmable by language, words, and thought. This has now been scientifically proven and explained. Of course, the frequency has to be correct, and this is why not everybody is equally successful or can do it with always the same strength. The individual person must work on the inner processes of maturity in order to establish a conscious communication with DNA. The Russian researchers work on a method that is not dependent on those factors, but will always work provided one uses the correct frequency.
But the higher developed an individual's consciousness is, the less need there is for any type of device, because one can achieve these results by oneself. And science will usually laugh at such ideas, but they can't confirm anything but the real results. The Russian scientists found that our DNA can cause disturbing patterns in a vacuum and actually can make magnetized wormholes. Now, wormholes are the microscopic equivalents of the Einstein-Rosen bridges in the vicinity of black holes that are left by burnt-out stars. These wormholes are tunnel connections between entirely different areas of the universe through which information can be transmitted outside of space and time. Well, the DNA attracts these bits of information and passes them onto our consciousness. This process of hypercommunication is most effective when you're in a state of relaxation. Stress, worries, or a hypoactive intellect prevent your successful hypercommunication or distorts it and makes it useless.
In nature, hypercommunication has been successfully applied for millions of years. The organized flow of life in insect states proves this dramatically. Modern man knows it only on a more subtle level as intuition, but we too can regain full use of it. An example from nature: when a queen ant is spatially separated from her colony, building still continues fervently and according to plan. If the queen is killed, however, all work in the colony stops. No ant knows what to do. Apparently, the queen sends the building plans also from far away via the group consciousness of her subjects. She can be as far away as she wants as long as she is alive. In man, hypercommunication is most often encouraged when one suddenly gains access to information that is outside one's knowledge base. Such hypercommunication is then experienced as inspiration or intuition. The Italian composer Giuseppe Tartini, for instance, dreamt one night that a devil sat at his bedside playing the violin. The next morning, Tartini was able to note down the piece exactly from memory, and he called it the Devil's Trill Sonata.
For years, a 42-year-old male nurse dreamed of a situation in which he was hooked up to a kind of knowledge CD, and knowledge from all imaginable fields then came to him, and he could remember them in the morning. There was such a flood of information, it seemed the whole encyclopedia was given him at night, and most of the facts were outside of his personal knowledge, but he knew them as a result of what he got at night.
When hypercommunication occurs, one can observe in the DNA as well as in the human being special phenomena. The Russian scientists irradiated DNA samples with laser light. On screen, a typical wave pattern was formed. When they removed the DNA sample, the wave pattern did not disappear, it remained. Many control experiments showed that the pattern still came from the removed sample, whose energy field apparently remained by itself. This effect is now called the phantom DNA effect. It is surmised that energy from outside of space and time still flows through the activated wormholes after the DNA was removed. The side effects encountered most often in hypercommunication, also in human beings, are inexplicable electromagnetic fields in the vicinity of the persons concerned. Electronic devices like CD players and the like can be irritated and cease to function for hours. When the electromagnetic field slowly dissipates, the devices function normally again. Many healers and psychics know this effect from their work. The better the atmosphere and the energy, the more frustrating it is that the recording device stops functioning and recording exactly at that moment. And repeated switching on and off after the session does not restore normal function, but the next morning all is back to normal. Perhaps this is reassuring to read for many, as it has nothing to do with them being technically inept It means they are good at hypercommunication.
In Grossner's book, he explains these situations, these connections. He says that in earlier times, humanity had been, like animals, strongly connected to group consciousness and acted as a group. To develop and experience individuality, we had to forget our hypercommunication. Now, we're fairly stable in our individual consciousness, and we can create a new form of group consciousness. One where we attain access to all information via our DNA without being forced or remotely controlled as to what to do with the information. We know, just as on the internet, our DNA can feed its proper data into the network. It can call up data from the network, and it can establish contact with other participants in the network. Remote healing, telepathy, it can then be explained. Some animals know from afar when their owners plan to return home. Now we can explain that now using the idea of group consciousness and hypercommunication. Any collective consciousness cannot be sensibly used over any period of time without a distinctive individuality. Otherwise, we'd revert to primitive herd instinct, and that's easily manipulated.
Hypercommunication in the new millennium means something quite different. Researchers think that if humans with fully individuality would regain group consciousness, they would have godlike power to create, alter, and shape things on Earth. And humanity is collectively moving towards such a group consciousness of the new kind. Excuse me. 50% of today's children will be problem children as soon as they go to school. The system lumps everyone together and demands adjustment. But the individuality of today's children is so strong that they refuse this adjustment and give up their idiosyncrasies in the most diverse ways.
So more and more clairvoyant children are born. And something in these children is striving toward a group consciousness of a new kind, and it's not going to be suppressed anymore. Weather, for example, is difficult to influence by a single individual, but it can be influenced by a group consciousness. Tribes have been doing it for a long time in their rain dances. We find that weather is strongly influenced by Earth resonance frequencies. This is the Schumann frequencies. And these frequencies are also, the Schumann frequencies are produced in our brain when we synchronize our thinking with other people and focus thoughts in laser-like fashion. So that's how we can influence as a group weather.
Researchers in group consciousness have formulated the theory of Type 1 civilizations. A humanity that developed the group consciousness of the new kind would have neither environmental problems nor scarcity of energy. For if it were to use its mental power as a unified civilization, it would have control of the energies of its home planet as a natural consequence, and that includes all natural catastrophes. A theoretical Type 2 civilization would even be able to control all energies of their home galaxy, and there's a book which is a German name, Not Wunder. I have, let's see, where's the next page? Over here. Described an example of this. Whenever a great many people focus their attention or consciousness on something similar, like Christmas time, football world championship, or the funeral of Lady Diana in England, then certain random number generators in computers start to deliver ordered numbers instead of the random ones. An ordered group consciousness creates order in its whole surroundings.
When a great number of people get together very closely, then the potentials of violence go away. It looks like here too a kind of humanitarian consciousness of all humanity is created when people get together and they start getting more peaceful.
To come back to the DNA, it apparently is also an organic superconductor that can work at normal body temperature. Artificial superconductors require extremely low temperatures of between 200 and 140 degrees Celsius to function. As one recently learned, all superconductors are able to store light and thus information. This is a further explanation of how the DNA can store information. There is another phenomenon linked to DNA and wormholes. Normally, these super small wormholes are highly unstable and are maintained only for the tiniest fractions of a second. Under certain conditions, stable wormholes can organize themselves, which then form distinctive vacuum domains in which, for example, gravity can transform into electricity.
Vacuum domains are self-radiant balls of ionized gas, and they contain lots of energy. There's regions in Russia where such radiant balls appear lots. Following the confusion at first, the Russians started research programs, and they found that people know that vacuum domains are there. They see them as shiny balls in the sky. The attentive people look at them and ask, what is that? It could be a UFO. It could fly in a triangle. And suddenly, when they think that, the light balls move in a triangle. Or they shot across the sky like hockey pucks. They accelerated from 0 to crazy speeds while sliding across the sky. So it depends on what you anticipate. Friendly ones flew in triangles to please people. The Russians found that in these regions where vacuum domains appear often and sometimes fly as balls of light from the sky, from the ground upwards, they can be guided by human thought. The vacuum domains emit waves of low frequencies, and these waves are also produced by our brains.
And because of the similarity of waves, they are able to react to our thoughts. To run excitedly into one that is on ground level might not be such a great idea because those balls of light can contain immense energies and are able to mutate our genes. They can. They don't necessarily have to, one has to say, for many spiritual teachers also produce such visible balls or columns of light in deep meditation or during energy work, which trigger decidedly pleasant feelings and do not cause any harm. Apparently, this is also dependent on some inner order and on the quality and provenance of the vacuum domain. There are some spiritual teachers with whom nothing is seen at first, but when one tries to take a photograph while they sit and speak or meditate in hypercommunication, one gets only a picture of a white cloud on a chair. Oh God, the white cloud on the chair. Isn't that funny? In some earth healing projects, such light effects also appear on photographs. Simply put, these phenomena have to do with gravity and anti-gravity forces that are also exactly described in this book, and with ever more stable wormholes and hypercommunication, and thus with energies from outside our time and space structure.
Earlier generations that got in contact with hypercommunication were convinced that an angel had appeared for them. We can't be too sure what forms the consciousness we get will be when we're using this hypercommunication, but we have simply made another giant step toward understanding our reality.
Official science also knows of gravity anomalies on Earth that contribute to the formation of vacuum domains, but only of ones below 1%. But recently, gravity anomalies have been found between 3 and 4%. One of these places is Rocco di Papa, south of Rome. Round objects of all kinds of balls of full buses roll uphill, but the stretch in Rocco di Papa is rather short, and defying logic skeptics still flee to the theory of an optical illusion, which it cannot be due to several features of the location. So,
well, that's about it for this program.
To talk about
Janet would like to talk about it.
This. Okay, so we interviewed Randy Kramer, who was able to regenerate his arm after it was taken off in a battle. Randy Kramer is a super soldier that is a whistleblower super soldier that had been in the Mars base colony. And what they told him at first is that, there's this machine you hook up to and it regenerates the arm. And it took only about a couple hours. But later down the line, he was told there's no need for the machine, that he was the one that was capable of doing it. The wormholes also were brought to the concept of everything has a wormhole, a singularity within it, like a body, a person does. And that is congruent and consistent with what Nassim Haramein has been talking about for years. And so, what would you like to add?
Well, Freddie Silva has shown that in sacred places, and particularly in pyramids and temples that have been shaped by the Anunnaki, the followers of Horus, that when there is a change in the piezoelectric ley line, and this happens just a few hours before dawn, there's a reversal of the way the energy of the Earth goes above water and above fault lines. That could be tapped, and people tended to build their sacred sites. The Anunnaki particularly built their pyramids over such places where there was crossing ley lines. And this piezoelectricity, if you give it a kick with a little HCl plus hydroxylated zinc, you make a hydrogen explosion. You pump water underneath the pyramid. You capacitate it with some crystals, and zap. That's how the ancients got their electricity. And but when people meditate in that kind of place, especially when they meditate on their ancestors or the stars they came from, they tend to make this kind of huge plasmic field, and it's all added to this other energy from the piezoelectric energy of the Earth, and it can really contact any place in the Akashic records. And it's just a matter of focusing the group mind. So it's good to meditate in a sacred space. If you can do it with another person, it's better. If it's in a group, it's extremely powerful.
So meditation and prayer and coming into group consciousness aligns with the singularity within the individuals all the way up to Source, God. And that's why you can't pray to kill people. You can only meditate for something that's positive because it aligns with the positive influences of the universes in the continuum. I don't think you can pray for anyway. That's inconsistent with the logic I'm getting from here. That it takes you being connected in one to pray and accomplish something. And if you are praying to accomplish something that is going to harm another person, that means you're disconnected from the oneness all the way up to Source, and you have to be connected it's a resonant harmony frequency. So I don't believe you can do that.
I have to give a little data. I am an anthropologist. Among the Australian Aborigines and many Aboriginal people are prayed to death, and Cannon has explained how this happens when the group believes that a person has been saucerized, unless he hires another sorcerer, among the Arunta, for example, of northern Australia. Unless you hire another sorcerer to send the curse back, the guy has a bone pointed at him, and the shaman says, "You will die." And so the guy gets real upset. He thinks not only does he think he's going to die and stop eating and drinking, but everybody else considers him dead already and starts talking to him. So it's been my experience that this piezoelectric energy, this group energy, and it's been directed by people like Hitler with his huge Nuremberg ceremonies, and his purpose was murderous. And so I think it's more of a neutral energy. And of course, the extraterrestrials concerned with Earth tend to be care about us and not be using it to that. But as an anthropologist, I've come across the use of directed group energy and individual energy, and it has been destructive to people.
So that's why you got to watch what you're thinking and what you're saying and what you're doing to thoughts or deeds. So if you're always worried about, dying from cancer, or if you're always worrying if you're in a negative spin, it's not sustainable. You will eventually succumb to it.
Yeah, it's better just to celebrate another day of living. Better just to celebrate another day of life. Right.
So going into a positive flow, you energize. It's positive negative duality, and the negative results in death, and the positive results in life, and the negative is the lack of positive energy, and the light is energizing and sustaining and supportive of higher and higher levels of consciousness, which will result in, as the article said, the formulation of a type 1 civilization. Right now, we are in a level 0 civilization because we are in this duality consciousness, and we have people that are focusing their energy on death and destruction and separation. Basically, when somebody believes that the apparent other is separate from self, and that it's somebody they can harm or kill, or that they want to harm or kill, or they disown, or they project their negative energies on, that sustains as level 0 civilization. So level Type 1 civilization is let me just repeat this, a humanity that develops a group consciousness of the new kind would neither have environmental problems nor scarcity of energy, and a Type 2 would even be able to control all the energies of their galaxy. It would these Type 1 and Type 2 would eliminate natural catastrophes. So if people were unified in their thoughts and their prayers, they could literally divert asteroids like the one that destroyed the dinosaurs, or Planet X flipping over the planet, what do you call it? The pole shift. Okay, back to you, Sasha.
Well, from my perspective, negative death isn't necessarily a negative in existentialism. We embrace both limits, it's called finitude, and the infinite, or source. And so that if you look at death as a transition through various incarnations or to various states, then it's just part of the process, be it in 100 years, 1,000 years, or 10,000 years. There's finitude and there's the infinite. Any dichotomy, you can center yourself between any dichotomous set of poles, and you have a dimension, and the more of that dimension you embrace, the greater your capacity it is for you to identify with the whole, in my opinion.
All right, and I think that's the end of it. Thank you very much, Dr. Lesson, for joining me, and much love and appreciation, aloha to everybody out there. And with that, anything else?
Aloha.
Aloha.
Thanks for joining us today on Aquarian Radio. We broadcast daily, and our schedule is on aquarianradio.com. Listen live by calling 646-649-0893, or you can listen live by calling 646-649-0893.
649.
Or listen to our archives on aquarianradio.com. Join us again soon, and do tell your friends. The age of Aquarius and the paradigm of peace is now.